Hello and welcome to the channel. Today you'll hear a true story that begins with an abuse of power and ends with a revolution that changed the lives of thousands. Imagine being forced to do 30 push-ups in the snow, humiliated by those who were supposed to protect you. But what if that experience became the starting point for the greatest police reform in history? If you enjoy inspiring and uplifting stories, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications right now. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to see how far these stories are reaching. Join us on this journey and be inspired to take part in the change. Marcus Chen sat at the Baltimore City Council table, his gaze fixed on his papers, but his mind was buzzing with the words he longed to speak. It was a cloudy day, and the light filtering through the window seemed to reflect the tension in the air. He took a deep breath, trying to quell the anxiety that accompanied him. This meeting was crucial not just for him, but for the entire community he represented. Around him, other council members were immersed in discussions about budgets and proposals. But Marcus knew that what was at stake was much more than numbers. We need to redirect resources from our police department to community programs that truly make a difference, he began, his voice firm and clear, capturing the attention of some present. Investing in education, mental health, and crime prevention is what our community really needs. No more military equipment for the police. That doesn't solve problems, it just sweeps them under the rug. A murmur of support arose from a few members, but was quickly drowned out by one of the older councilmen, Mr. Thompson. He crossed his arms and shot Marcus a disdainful look. Marcus, do you really believe social programs can replace police force? We're talking about public safety here. We need more resources to deal with crime, not less. Marcus felt his heart race. He knew he was facing fierce resistance, but he couldn't back down. Public safety goes beyond increasing police resources. It's about trust and building relationships with the community. When people feel safe, there's no need for a military arsenal on the streets. We need an approach that is not just reactive but proactive. At that moment, a woman in the audience, Maria, stood up. He recognized her immediately. She was a well-known local activist, a mother who had lost a son to police violence. Marcus is right, she said, her voice shaking slightly, but filled with the determination of someone who carries deep pain. I have lived through what police brutality can do. We need more resources for family support programs, for prevention. We need change. The council fell silent for a moment, the intensity of Maria's words echoing in the room. Marcus knew her emotional connection could be a turning point, but Thompson's glare remained an obstacle. And who is going to ensure these programs are effective? What's the plan, Marcus? He pressed, trying to steer the conversation away. We need to work together as a community, Marcus replied, now with more confidence. Let's listen to the citizens, gather data. We can implement a feedback system to measure effectiveness. This isn't just about numbers, it's about lives. After the meeting, Marcus left the council building with a mix of frustration and hope. The conversations echoed in his mind as he walked through the streets of Baltimore, observing the people passing by. He wondered if his words had really made a difference. The city still bore the scars of inequality, and police approaches often felt like a blunt response to a complex problem. "Mama, are you okay?" asked a young man passing by, interrupting his thoughts. Marcus smiled, remembering how, even amidst difficulties, the youth still held hope. "Yes, just thinking about how we can help our community. There's a lot to be done," he replied as he continued on his way. However, as he crossed a street, something made him stop. Two police officers were parked in a squad car, watching him with a look he couldn't decipher. A tightening in his stomach made him alert. He tried to ignore it, but when one of the officers stepped out of the car and approached him, apprehension washed over him. "Sir, are you aware that your taillight is broken?" the officer asked, his tone sounding more like an accusation than a simple warning. "I didn't know, officer," Marcus replied, trying to remain calm, but indignation began to swell within him. "I'm on my way home and that's not an excuse," the officer interrupted sharply. "Get out of the car. We need to check your identity." Feelings of humiliation and indignation began to intertwine, and Marcus realized he was about to experience a nightmare. What should have been a simple conversation was now turning into an alarming situation. He hesitated, his hands trembling slightly as he searched for the right words to defend himself. But the truth was he didn't know what to do. Snow fell gently, creating a white, icy blanket on the streets of Baltimore, and the flakes danced in the wind, but none of it seemed to ease the tension in the air. Marcus Chen, still rattled by the police encounter, faced two men in uniform, Brady and Thompson, who regarded him with disdain. The chill of the weather was insignificant compared to the coldness in their gazes. "Do some push-ups, Chen," ordered Brady, crossing his arms with a smug smile. "Let's see if you can learn to be a decent citizen." Marcus, even feeling the humiliation that the situation imposed on him, decided that he would not be defeated. "You don't have the right to treat me like this," he replied firmly, trying to keep his voice steady despite the cold that penetrated his bones. "I haven't done anything wrong." "Ah, but you're one of the big shots on the council, aren't you?" Thompson retorted, stepping closer to Marcus. "I think it's time you learn to respect the authority of the law. Start moving, or we'll have to use more persuasive methods." He looked around, realizing that there was no one nearby to help him. Despair threatened to take over his mind, but Marcus took a deep breath and decided not to identify himself as a council member. He didn't want his status to be used as a justification for the abuse he was enduring. "Do you think this is what? Military training?" "I'm a citizen. I don't have to submit to this." "Citizen or not, you're not in a position to refuse," Brady said, his eyes cold and calculating. "Now, do push-ups, or else..." "Or else what?" Marcus interrupted, his voice rising a notch. "Are you going to arrest me for not doing push-ups in the snow? This is ridiculous." The pressure mounted, and doubt began to assail his mind. He knew that any resistance could end badly, but something inside him refused to yield. "If you have to arrest me, go ahead, but I'm not going to humiliate myself to that extent." Brady and Thompson exchanged glances, surprised by Marcus's courage. It was rare to find someone who dared to challenge them like this, especially a prominent member of the municipal council. Tension grew, and the falling snow felt heavier than ever. Meanwhile, a bystander, a young man named David, who was just a few meters away, was watching the scene unfold with a cell phone in hand. He knew that what was happening was wrong, and indignation surged within him. "Hey, you can't do this. It's abuse," he shouted, positioning his cell phone to record. "Don't you have any shame?" Brady turned sharply, his expression filled with rage. "And you, who are you to interfere?" "This isn't your business." "It might not be my business, but it's everyone's business," David replied, his voice resolute. "You can't treat people like this." Marcus felt a wave of hope wash over him at David's bravery. "Thanks, man," he murmured, still standing his ground. "I won't let this happen without a fight." The officers, realizing that the situation was becoming public, began to hesitate. "We're just doing our job, Chen," Brady said, trying to regain control of the situation. "You should be careful not to get into trouble." "The trouble is you," Marcus answered, looking Brady and Thompson in the eye. "The community will no longer tolerate this kind of behavior." David kept recording, and the scene quickly spread across social media. Outrage and support began to swell, warming the hearts of those watching. Marcus's struggle was not just personal, it was a cry against the oppression many faced daily. When the officers realized they could no longer intimidate him, they stepped back, frustrated. Even trembling from the cold, Marcus felt stronger than ever. With David's recording gaining traction on social media, that police approach would become a symbol of resistance, demonstrating that the fight against brutality was not in vain. The morning after the incident that shook his life, Marcus Chen woke up to the incessant sound of notifications on his cell phone. He rubbed his eyes, confused and still feeling the effects of the past humiliation. When he opened social media, a tidal wave of support and criticism of police abuse hit him like a tsunami. The posts ranged from messages of solidarity to public outrage, and he realized that the incident had turned into a symbol of the fight against police brutality in Baltimore. "This is what I wanted to happen," Marcus thought, as a mix of anger and hope pulsed in his chest. He got up, took a quick shower, and put on a black shirt, as a symbolic act of mourning for the injustice that so many faced. The idea that his pain could become a catalyst for meaningful change gave him strength. He needed to take action. Later, in the meeting room of his office, Marcus found his team gathered. Lucas, the civil rights attorney, was present, along with some young activists he had invited. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation and determination. "We need to turn this situation into something bigger," Marcus began, taking the floor. We can't let this just be a headline. This needs to be a movement. Lucas nodded, his gaze focused. I agree. Community support is crucial. We need a clear strategy to channel this energy and solidify our fight. What if we hold an event, a community meeting where we can discuss what happened and hear the stories of others who have faced similar situations? Suggested one of the young activists, named Anna. Her voice was strong, but there was a glimmer of nervousness in her eyes. That could be powerful, Marcus responded. Let's create a space where voices can be heard. Not just mine, but everyone who has something to say. The team members began to discuss possibilities, each contributing ideas. Enthusiasm grew as the vision of a movement took shape. It was essential for the community to unite, for citizens to feel empowered to share their own experiences of abuse and oppression. After hours of planning, Marcus felt they had created a solid outline for the event. But at the same time, a sense of apprehension began to settle in his heart. He knew he was heading into a minefield. The resistance he would face would not only be emotional, the system he was about to challenge was deep and corrupt. We need to be careful, Lucas warned. The last thing we want is for this to become an opportunity for them to discredit our voices. We need evidence, data, and stories that highlight the extent of the problem. You're right, Marcus agreed. But that can't stop us from acting. The time for change is now. If we let this opportunity slip away, we'll be perpetuating injustice. With renewed determination, Marcus called an emergency meeting at the city council. The plan was to address police brutality directly while also seeking community support. He knew he needed allies within the council, but was aware that many were already aligned with the interests of the police department. I'll talk to some of the other council members before the meeting, Marcus said, his tone revealing the urgency he felt. We need to ensure they understand the importance of this. It's not just about me. It's about all of us. Lucas, observing Marcus's determination, commented, Don't forget that the resistance will be fierce. They won't give up their privileges without a fight. Being prepared for attacks will be vital. I know, Marcus replied, his expression hardening. But if we don't speak up now, when will we? It's time to break the silence. As the day progressed, Marcus felt more energized than ever. He was about to challenge the power structures that allowed police brutality to persist. The fight wouldn't be easy, but the spark he had ignited could turn into an uncontrollable fire, capable of illuminating the darkness of injustice that plagued his community. Deep down, he believed that change was not only possible but inevitable. The city council auditorium was packed. The walls, adorned with portraits of past leaders, seemed to absorb the tension that filled the air. Marcus Chen, standing beside the podium, scanned the crowd. His heart raced in his chest, but the determination in his eyes was undeniable. He knew this meeting was a crucial moment, not just for him, but for the entire Baltimore community. When Marcus called Maria to the stage, a respectful silence fell over the room. The African-American mother, who had lost her son to an act of police brutality, walked slowly, carrying the weight of years of pain in each step. When she reached the microphone, her voice trembled, but she quickly found strength in her memories of her son. My name is Maria, she began, her voice echoing in the auditorium. My son, Jamal, was only 19 years old when he was approached by police on an ordinary day. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just on his way home after visiting a friend, and yet, he never made it home. A wave of murmurs swept through the room. Marcus felt the atmosphere shift, empathy and sorrow intertwining into a single sentiment. He noticed tears in the eyes of many present, including council members who had previously been indifferent to the issue of police brutality. Maria continued, her voice now stronger. He was a student, had dreams. He wanted to be a doctor, but all of that was taken away in an instant because of the fear and ignorance of some police officers. I'm not just crying out for justice for myself, but for every mother who has lost a child to violence. We need change. We need accountability. As she finished, she looked directly at Marcus, who was there to support her. He nodded, understanding the depth of her pain and the urgency of the struggle. The audience was moved, many standing to applaud Maria's courage. After Maria's testimony, other citizens began to speak out. A middle-aged man raised his hand, and Marcus invited him to step forward. My name is David, he said, his voice a bit hesitant. I'm also a victim. My son was wrongfully arrested and ended up being assaulted in the police department. He didn't survive. What we need is a system that truly protects citizens, not one that treats them like criminals." David's words sparked a murmur of indignation in the auditorium. More people stood up, sharing their stories of pain and abuse. An older woman, her face etched with time and sorrow, shouted, "Enough! We can't take this anymore. Our children deserve to live without fear." Marcus felt a growing weight on his shoulders. He knew he couldn't simply listen to these stories and let the moment fade away. It was time for action. With a firm look, he addressed the crowd. "These stories are powerful and painful. They represent not only each of your sorrows but what is wrong with our system. We need reforms that ensure no one else goes through what you've experienced. It's time for us to unite and fight for a better future for our communities." The room erupted in applause and shouts of support. The energy was palpable, and Marcus felt the tide beginning to turn. The voices that had once been silenced now echoed loudly, and hope began to blossom. After an intense debate, council members began discussing possible solutions. Some proposals were raised, but resistance still lingered. One council member, known for his loyalty to the police department, raised his voice. "We need to be cautious. These changes could harm our officers, our system. What we're asking for is a balance." Marcus didn't hesitate. Balance? Or are we just protecting those who abuse power? We can't do this anymore. Our citizens are crying out for change, and we have a responsibility to listen. We need to reform, not just in words, but in concrete actions. Finally, after hours of heated discussions, the council voted. Silence filled the auditorium as the votes were counted. When the results were announced, a cheer erupted among the crowd. The comprehensive reform of the police department was approved. Marcus felt a mix of relief and determination. The struggle was just beginning, but this was a monumental step toward justice and equity. Maria, tears in her eyes, looked at Marcus and softly said, "Thank you. This is just the beginning, but we need to keep fighting." He nodded, knowing that together they could turn pain into action and hope. The atmosphere in the municipal council meeting room was one of anticipation and hope. Marcus Chen, alongside Lucas, the civil rights attorney, and Sarah, a local activist, prepared to announce the new phase in the fight for justice and police reform. The walls were adorned with banners celebrating the community's diversity and unity. Marcus, feeling more confident than ever, glanced at Lucas and Sarah, sensing the vibrant energy radiating from them. "We are about to make history," Marcus said with a determined smile. "This reform is not just a promise. It is a commitment to our community. Let's show that change is possible." Lucas, with his glasses perched on the tip of his nose, added, "We need everyone to understand that this is not just a fight for a few. It is for all of us. And for that, we need an effective training program. One that not only teaches police officers to de-escalate situations, but also cultivates empathy." Sarah agreed, her intense gaze reflecting her passion. We must involve veteran officers in this process. They have valuable experience and can help shape the future we want. If we can convince them to embrace this new approach, we'll have a real chance to transform the culture within the department. The team met with a group of officers of various ranks, all aware that change was necessary but apprehensive about what it would mean for their careers. Sergeant Wilson, a respected veteran, raised his voice amid the discussion. "What you are proposing could be risky. The police have always been trained to act assertively. How can we change that without compromising our safety?" Marcus took a deep breath before responding. "We understand your concerns, Sergeant, but what we are witnessing on the streets is a reflection of a system that needs re-evaluation. Violence cannot be the first response. We need to learn to resolve conflicts peacefully. That doesn't mean you will be less safe. It means creating an environment where everyone feels safer." Marcus's words resonated in the room, and a murmur of agreement began to rise among the officers. Sarah seized the opportunity. "Let's develop a training program that includes simulations of real-life situations where you can practice de-escalation techniques and, more importantly, develop empathy. We want you to understand the community's perspective." The idea began to gain traction, and the veteran officers, initially hesitant, started to engage in the conversation. "If we can see things from the community's point of view, that could really change how we interact with them," said Officer Martinez, a newcomer who had already witnessed police brutality in action. As discussions progressed, a new light seemed to shine on the project. Marcus and his team began drafting an action plan, joining forces with the officers to create a program that not only addressed de-escalation, but also emphasized the importance of respect and dignity in policing. In the weeks that followed, the three worked tirelessly. Lucas mobilized legal resources to ensure the program was implemented with proper institutional support. We need legal guarantees to protect everyone involved. If we want this to work, we need everyone to feel secure in making these changes, he said while reviewing the documents. Sarah, in turn, organized community sessions, inviting members of the community to share their stories and experiences with the police. It's crucial that officers hear directly from the community. This will help build bridges, she asserted, excited about the idea of fostering open dialogue. Over time, the team began to see results. Veteran officers became advocates for the idea, and training sessions started taking place. Each session was marked by a rich exchange of experiences and perspectives. In one of these meetings, a group of officers, visibly moved, shared their own stories of how they had been treated unfairly in their childhoods. "Oh, I never thought this conversation could make me feel this way, vulnerable, but it's important that we see the other side," said Officer Ramirez, his voice choked with emotion. At the end of each session, the team felt they were getting closer to creating a new paradigm. There was a growing recognition that change was not only desired but necessary. Marcus looked at his colleagues, feeling the determination pulsating in the air. "We are on the right path," he stated, full of hope. "This is the real change that our community deserves." The seeds of transformation were being planted, and although the road ahead was still fraught with challenges, the light of hope shone brightly, fueled by unity and collective effort. 6 months had passed since the wave of reforms began in the Baltimore Police Department, and the atmosphere in the city seemed to have changed. Complaints against the police had decreased, and the community's trust, which had once been shaken, now seemed to flourish. At a community event held in a local park, Marcus Chen watched from a distance as interactions between police and citizens appeared more friendly. He recalled all the difficulties faced thus far, but the smiles on the faces of children playing next to officers, who were now in uniform but displayed a more open and welcoming demeanor, filled him with hope. "It's amazing to see this, isn't it?" Lucas, his lawyer and friend, approached him, observing the scene with a satisfied look. "These officers are really trying to change." "Yeah, but we still need to stay vigilant," Marcus replied, his expression serious. "Changes in attitude aren't enough if there's no system to support them. Corruption is still there, and we must remain alert." Lucas nodded, a look of concern settling on his face. "Do you think corruption is still a real problem?" "I know it is," Marcus answered, narrowing his eyes. "Maria and I have received information about some strange things happening within the department. We need to investigate this further." Meanwhile, on the main stage of the event, a group of police officers began sharing their experiences about how the new training had impacted their approaches. Sergeant Brady, one of the officers who had faced criticism in the past, was among the first to speak. "When I started my career, I viewed the police as a force to be feared. But now, with the new training, I've learned to see people as partners, not enemies. This has changed everything for me," he declared, his voice strong and resolute. The audience applauded, and Marcus felt a knot unravel in his chest. He wanted to believe that the change was genuine, but the conversations he had had with Maria troubled him. She was increasingly anxious about the possibility that corruption still lingered, even with the reforms in place. After the event, Marcus met Maria at a nearby cafe. They sat at a corner table now where they could talk privately, away from the bustle of the event. "Marcus, I can't ignore the stories I've heard," Maria began, her voice heavy with emotion. "People are still afraid to report abuses. Corruption didn't just disappear overnight. We need to act now." Marcus sighed and looked at his hands. He understood her urgency, but he also knew that acting hastily could jeopardize everything they had achieved. "Maria, I agree that we need to do something, but we need solid evidence. We can't just start talking. That could ruin everything we've worked for." "And what if there's no more time?" Maria countered, frustration evident in her tone. "Are you sure you're willing to risk more lives while we wait?" "I'm not ignoring that. I just want to make sure we're prepared for the battle ahead," Marcus replied, his voice firm yet filled with concern. "We need allies. We need information. and we need to act cautiously. Maria looked at him, the conflict in her eyes reflecting the pain she carried. I just want the pain I feel not to be in vain. I don't want any more mothers to cry for their children. Marcus extended his hand and held hers, a gesture of solidarity. I feel your pain, and it motivates me every day. But we'll find a way to do this together. Let's investigate and uncover the truth. Then we can act. That night, as Marcus made his way home, his thoughts were tangled. He knew the fight wasn't over, and that the real challenge was just beginning. Corruption might be hidden in the shadows, but the light that he and his team were trying to bring to Baltimore was stronger than ever. They just needed to muster the courage to confront what lay ahead, even if it meant facing the demons of those they trusted. What was the moment in this story that moved you the most or left you speechless? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave your comment below and share your reflections with us. Your participation is essential in helping us create even more impactful stories. If you know someone who would be inspired by this story, share this video with them right now. Let's work together to spread messages that transform and inspire. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to get our next stories firsthand. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Every like helps YouTube show this content to more people. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next emotional journey. Sure, please provide the text you would like me to translate. Sure, please provide the text that you would like me to translate, and I'll be happy to help. Sure, please provide the text you would like me to translate, and I'll be happy to assist you. Sure, please provide the text you'd like me to translate, and I'll ensure it meets your requirements for accuracy and fluency in American English.